The day is August 10th, 2015. The owners of Columbia House have filed for bankruptcy. A generation of youth who were in some ways swindled into possibly illegal contracts as minors rejoiced as many of their debts and financial mistakes were forgiven. The hustle was over. No more ads for 12 CDs for the price of one or 8 CDs for a penny. No more letters from the company in bold terms demanding inflated amounts of money for a single CD, or even in the worst cases, collection letters that likely went out to hundreds of thousands of people. I know firsthand about a lot of this because I was one of the ignorant youth who saw my chance to grow my music collection for pennies on the dollar, and soon enough, I found out it wasn't quite that simple. Breaking down how all of this worked, Columbia House and BMG was once a competitor, but later a partner. They advertised everywhere. It was always this huge ad promising, physical media bliss. 12 CDs for a penny really grabs the attention of a 13 to 14-year-old who's just getting into music and attempting to grow his music collection. I admit, I dove right in and started filling out my selections. This is sort of like the buy now, pay later that every site is trying to sling these days. These guys just had a variation of that hook that was maybe a little bit more aggressive. Sure, we'll send you 12 CDs, but within the fine print, you also need to purchase X amount of CDs at a price similar to extortion. It was priced as if they had shipped and made these CDs on Mars. But whatever, I get the CDs, I can pay that price later, it's all good, right? Well, sorta. This wasn't the only red flag. They called themselves a club, which in itself should have been a reason for caution. But come on, think back when you were an early teenager. How often did you execute caution, deep thinking, or even reasoning? As this was a club, you signed up to get the CDs and they had you in a contract. A contract that in all likelihood wasn't even legal given your age, but that's another topic completely. A CD would show up in the mail once a month. You didn't ask for it, but it's still coming unless you remembered to fill out that card within 10 days of receiving it. And don't worry, that CD was also priced well above anything that you would ever pay at a store. It's seemingly simple and without a doubt designed to turn into something deceptively complex. Could an adult navigate this? Yes, certainly, but the entire system was designed for you to fail. Now think about your everyday middle schooler. Most of them can't cook macaroni and cheese, yet alone navigate a mail order scam. I think I signed up somewhere around 7th or 8th grade. I think I may have even signed up to both Columbia House and BMG to double dip my selections. I can definitely still remember the joys of getting all that music for next to nothing. And I can also remember the fear and concern reading a letter demanding payment in bold letters. I fulfilled the contract, I bought the CDs at their insane prices to fulfill the deal, but it wasn't long after that I missed one of their monthly cards saying that I didn't want their CD of the month to come. And sure enough, that was followed up with another nasty letter demanding payment or to be sent to collections. I paid the prices and got out alive, canceling my membership shortly after. But it was my first experience with anything like this, a predatory business model that used psychology and deceptive marketing tactics, in many cases on minors. Columbia House wasn't just a business model either. In all reality, this was huge. It was sort of a cultural phenomenon that shaped how millions of Americans built their music collections. Many of you likely made it out unscathed like myself, but without a doubt, beneath these enticing penny deals lurked a complex web of fine print, psychological manipulation, and debt collection, practices that would make a loan shark blush. Getting into the origins, Columbia House wasn't always controversial. It started in 1955 as a legitimate mail-order division of Columbia Records. The original idea was simple: bring music to rural Americans who didn't have access to record stores. Pretty noble, right? These must be the good guys. But by the late 1980s and throughout the 90s, Columbia House and its competitor BMG had perfected what critics called the negative option business model. It's the whole 8 CDs for a penny that I mentioned earlier that had you in a contract for additional selections at what they call club pricing. At its peak, Columbia House was responsible for an astonishing 15% of all CD sales in the United States. In 1996 alone, they shipped 53 million CDs to members. None of this was a fluke. Columbia House didn't succeed by accident. Their business model leveraged several powerful psychological principles. First, there's what behavioral economics call pain of paying. By separating the pleasure of receiving ACDs from the pain of paying for them, Columbia House created this frictionless entry point that, it was true. They made the process absolutely simple and pain-free. The single penny didn't even register as a real purchase in people's minds. Secondly, they exploited what's called hyperbolic discounting, our tendency to value immediate rewards over future costs. 8 CDs right now, they felt amazing, while the commitment to buy more CDs later at higher prices seemed, that was such a distant thing, I wasn't even going to worry about it right now. Third, the negative option billing system took advantage of human forgetfulness. Columbia House knew that a significant percentage of customers would forget to mail back those monthly cards. I wonder if you could still truly pull off a stunt like this today. Essentially get people to sign up for something, and then actually have to tell the company that you don't want them to send you random things. And if you don't tell us, we're going to send you things that you likely don't even want. And at that point, you have to pay for them regardless. Not a great deal when you break it down like that. Imagine signing up for like a Target club where they sent you random products every month. Here's a monthly supply to exotic bird food. Well, that's fantastic. And finally, they targeted young people, often teenagers, who were building their identities through music, but had a limited experience with contracts and fine print. Many subscribers were too young to legally enter into these agreements, but that didn't seem to stop them, myself included. It really appears to be a business model where they wanted it to be as simple as possible to sign up for a financial obligation, but at the same time, make the terms and conditions around fulfilling and canceling it complex. You can totally understand how something like this was very profitable. So what happened if you actually just stopped paying Columbia House? And this is where things got ugly for a lot of members. It's sort of funny to look into this topic. When I was reading on some of the online forums, a number of people were like, "What? You actually paid them?" Well, I did, I guess. The threatening letters, they must have just been living rent-free in my head. Or maybe my parents read them and had a talk with me. I honestly can't remember. Columbia House had an aggressive collections department. Former employees have described how they were trained to pursue even the really small debts with escalating pressure tactics. It would start with these friendly little reminders, and then progress into increasingly threatening letters with bold red text and warnings about your credit score. Many former members describe receiving calls at work or even having collection notices sent to their parents' homes. Remember, many of these subscribers, they were teenagers who signed up without parental permission. Imagine your mom opening some threatening mail, concerning legal action over $20 in CDs that you ordered without her knowledge. A lot of really impressed parents here. One of the really controversial practices was sending these accounts to third-party collection agencies. These agencies would often report these debts to credit bureaus, potentially damaging young people's credit scores before they'd even, ever applied for their first loan. It wasn't uncommon at the time for members to quickly remember their previous financial mistakes, when they went to acquire something like a home loan and finding that their credit was in a poor state. Nothing like getting denied for a house loan because you didn't pay for some CDs that you didn't even want in the first place. The fault can't be placed completely on Columbia House in this case. Yes, the members should have just paid the money, they should have just fulfilled the contract and got out, but I truly believe it was a system designed to make people fail. Their profits were built around people who forgot to send back the monthly card, stating that they didn't want whatever garbage they were slinging that month. And I'm going to touch more on that in just a minute here. While Columbia House claimed they verified ages, countless stories suggest otherwise, and I think I can back that one up too. The company settled multiple class action lawsuits over their marketing collection practices throughout the 90s. On to some of the accounting tricks they pulled, and this one's kind of wild. Columbia House operated in what industry insiders call loss to leader. They expected to lose money on a significant percentage of new members who would sign up, get their penny CDs, fulfill the minimum requirements, and quit. Basically, they were the ones who were getting out while you're still ahead. The economics only worked because the production of CDs was actually very low. It was often under $2. And then there was also the other people, the percentage of customers who would forget to return their monthly cards. That was a huge profit model for the company because those would in turn bring those high-priced CDs that people would have to pay for. And then there was also people who would just keep their memberships beyond the requirement for no real reason. And then there was many that never canceled it at all. Who knows, maybe they paid it all the way up to the bankruptcy. I hope they're still not paying it today. Here's what's truly fascinating. Columbia House crafted what was essentially the precursor to today's subscription models. The company understood that the true value wasn't in the individual transactions, but it's more like in the customer lifetime value. Does that sound familiar to you? Because it's basically like Netflix, Amazon Prime, or any of the other thousands of companies using this strategy. In this case of Columbia House, it was just more deceptive marketing. Well, the writing was pretty much on the wall for Columbia House at this point, so let's cover the decline and fall. Columbia House's business model was fundamentally tied to physical media. When Napster launched in 1999, it marked the beginning of a major disruption. Suddenly, consumers could access vast music libraries without paying anything or signing into a contract. While this was illegal, and in most cases it spread malware to all of your parents' computers, File sharing services showed that consumers, they didn't need to get music from a plastic case. By the early 2000s, CD sales across the industry began declining at an ever-increasing pace. The RIAA reported that CD sales fell from $13.2 billion in 2000 to just $3.4 billion in 2012. Columbia House, being entirely dependent on physical media sales, was hit particularly hard by this trend, as you can imagine. Columbia House did try to evolve with some of the changing times. They came up with this DVD club. They shifted their focus to the DVDs, hoping to capitalize on the still growing DVD market. I'm kind of confused here, as it appears this is still an active service. Actually, I'm really concerned here. They played around with some other things like online stores, but at this time the competition was already steps ahead. And then in 2005, they merged with BMG, who was once one of their competitors. This was just an attempt to consolidate, the resources and the subscriber bases to remain viable. And then it wasn't long after that they ran into iTunes. Even with all the changes that I just mentioned, it was far too late. When Apple launched the iTunes Store in 2003, it delivered a devastating blow to Columbia House's model. iTunes offered individual song purchases. No need to buy the entire album at this point. There was instant gratification, no more waiting in the mail for delivery. There was obviously no contract obligations, which was a huge one. Transparent pricing. Columbia House's complex agreements and high-price offerings just simply compete with this simpler, more consumer-friendly alternative. Each ownership came with a different strategic vision and restructuring attempts, but none successfully addressed the fundamental problem. Their core business model was becoming obsolete. And then there was the nail in the coffin, and that was the streaming death blow. The rise of streaming services like Spotify and the growth of YouTube and other music platforms effectively, eliminated all the remaining justification for Columbia House's model. At this point, why would consumers sign contracts to build physical collections of media, pay premium prices for CDs, deal with their crazy billing strategies, or even have to wait for the physical delivery of media? When we could just virtually access all the music ever recorded immediately for a simple monthly fee, and it didn't have anything extra tied to it. Sure, a lot of us love CDs again now, but we don't want to get into a contract to buy them. By 2010, Columbia House had discontinued their music club entirely, focusing exclusively on DVD and Blu-ray sales through the Columbia House DVD Club. But even the DVD market had collapsed with the rise of Netflix, streaming, and all the other video platforms. In August 2015, they finally filed for bankruptcy protection. It was obvious there was nothing that could be done. The decline in physical media at this point was glaring, and it was an unavoidable detail. At the time of bankruptcy, the once mighty company that had generated over $1.4 billion in annual revenue at its peak in the 90s, they reported just $17 million in revenue for 2014. Their active membership had dwindled. All that was left was a tiny fraction of the millions that they once served. So was Columbia House actually a scam? By today's standards, many of their practices would actually be illegal. The negative option billing that Columbia House pioneered is now regulated by the FTC, requiring clearer disclosures and easier cancellation methods. But scam might be too complex of a word for a business that operated in the gray areas of marketing ethics for a decade. Perhaps Columbia House should be best understood as a cultural artifact, a business that reflected America's complex relationship with consumerism, credit, and cultural identity. If you enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to like and subscribe. I promise I won't even send you any threatening collection notices. You can actually leave at any time. And let me know in the comments, did you or someone you know ever join Columbia House, BMG? How'd the whole thing go for you? Take care. Later.